I'm Greg Tepper. That's Greg Powers. And this is This Week
in Cruton.
It's This Week in Recruiting. Greg Powers of Next Level Athlete. Follow him on Twitter at GPowersScout. Follow Next Level Athlete on Twitter at NextLevelD1. See his fine work at TexasFootball.com/recruiting. And, of course, this is brought to you by your good chicken friends at Chicken Express. Chicken Express. I had it for lunch yesterday.
Oh.
Chicken Express.
Respect.
I did. I actually did.
I had it this week as well, and I
Super
have to give a shout out really to Chicken Express.
Here
because
we go.
So 6:58, I pull in the Chicken Express line. There's 3 cars in front of me, right?
Dangerous.
And I ordered for the whole family. Got the family meal.
Oh, nice.
I aspire
By 7:01, I was pulling out
wow.
of the parking
wow.
lot.
And your family meals, I mean, that's a lot
That's
of
a lot of
food.
chicken.
Yeah, 20 chicken strips. I think 4 rolls, family sides.
A lot of chicken.
So
You got
good.
growing
but 3
boys,
minutes,
too.
like no BS.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
3 minutes out, and I thought, no way. Whenever I saw the 3,
Yeah,
like you
no
pull
way.
around the side and you see the 3 cars in front of you, like and then you 3 minutes later, gone.
There's nothing worse than pulling into a drive-thru. Like you're really hungry, you pull into a drive-thru, and there's like a long line. You're like, oh my god.
Yeah, and we won't name names, but we know certain drive-thrus that take a lot longer to do stuff, and it's like, I
I'll
already
call
knew
one
this
out.
was going to take
I'll
a
call
long
one out.
time.
Starbucks.
That's because everyone orders a triple frappa.
All I want is a cup
whatever.
of coffee. I've never had coffee at Chicken Express. I'm sure it's great. It's This Week in Recruiting with Greg Powers, Next Level Athlete. A lot to get to on TexasFootball.com/recruiting. But first, Gregory,
Oh no.
a trivia question.
Oh.
Ew.
So
Ooh.
I'll spoil what Big Guest Thursday is for tomorrow because I'm recording the interview right after the show today. We're going to be talking with Alex Brown, who is the director of recruiting, director of football recruiting for the Rice Owls, as well as their NFL liaison. Got a lot of questions for him, but one of them I'm going to ask him is about recruiting in-state, because that's something that I know Mike Bloomgren's really passionate about. Greg Powers, in the class of 2021, what percentage of players signed in-state?
In the whole state?
I'm talking not just in Texas, nationally. What percentage of all
Texas?
prospects? No,
all
prospects
prospects.
in all high school prospects, 2,130 of them.
Okay.
What percentage of them signed to an in-state school?
19%.
33.9%.
Okay.
And I wonder, here's one thing I think is interesting. I bet, I would need to go back and look at last year's data and the day before. I bet that's up just because of COVID restrictions, and you're going to probably tighten the...
Something interesting I kind of discovered putting the top 300 list together for the class of 2022 that will, of course, come out in the Bible this year at the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. There's not as much recruiting activity this year because of all of the players coming back. So the class of 2022 has probably been more affected by the pandemic than the class of 2021.
Yeah.
There are a lot of guys right now in that 225 to top 400 range who are no doubt like these are, and some of them are even P5 type of guys.
Yeah.
Who don't have any offers.
Well, and let me ask you, because we mentioned this on Monday on the headlines show. The word comes out that the dead period, the recruiting dead period, will expire at the end of May. It will expire June 1, theoretically at midnight. The dead period expires. Timing wise. Do you think that's enough time to play catch-up for these 22 recruits, or is that time just lost and gone?
Well, what I think is the problem with the class of 2022 is the tight scholarship numbers. There hasn't been anything to alleviate the logjam of players that are on rosters. The rosters are still sitting at 85 players, and that's really what you're always up against is that 85 scholarship limit. And now with transfer, and the transfer portal, that's been another huge change. And you have schools out there now, especially I'll take a look at some in-state schools. SMU has been a premier landing destination for high-profile transfers, especially guys who want to come back to Texas like Jahari Rogers, who went to Florida, and now he's come back and transferred to SMU, who was a 4-star guy coming out of high school. These schools have to make a tough decision now on, do I recruit a high school kid, or do I try to save this scholarship for a guy who may have been a little bit more highly rated, has some college experience underneath his belt, and is now looking to jump out of a premier program, a P5 program, and wants to get a fresh start. Yeah. They have to make a tough decision there, and that puts the high school prospects, I think, sometimes at a disadvantage, because some of these schools are sorting through what may be their best options for that. And there will be schools who want to hit the transfer portal really hard. Coaches are going to feel the need to put a winning product on the field as soon as possible to keep their jobs. But there will be some schools who then dip in and take advantage of the fact that these high school players aren't as being heavily recruited. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But it's just like I guess it's a whole new world of recruiting right now, and we're going to have to learn through it over the next 6 months of exactly what and who fits in where. And it could be a huge change. I mean, you're going to see some programs, I feel, and SMU is one of these schools, who are going to jump up and compete not only for the conference championship, but these are guys who are going to now be in the national spotlight for the players that they're bringing in.
No, I think you're exactly right. It's going to be very interesting to see how things shake out as far as with the dead period lifting going forward. Okay, so TexasFootball.com/recruiting. You can find This Week in Recruiting. Let's start with our prospect on the rise. Our prospect on the rise is a guy who's committed to Florida. Not a whole lot of upside as far as rising, but maybe it's because the quarterback ranks in the class of 2022 in Texas are so top heavy. There's just a couple of guys who are so overwhelmingly excellent that Nick Evers gets maybe overlooked. The Flower Mound quarterback, he is a guy who looked excellent at the Elite 11 camp here in Dallas. He earned an invite to the Elite 11 finals. And who he's going to join Connor Wigman, Quinn Ewers, and Kate Klubnik there. Nick Evers, I think one of those guys that any other class of quarterbacks, we wouldn't stop talking about him, but because it's this class of quarterbacks, maybe he's flying under people's radar.
Well, I just think he's a guy, he makes prospect on the rise this week because he's a guy who I personally had undervalued and underrated. And getting a chance to see him operate in person helped give me some clarification on what type of tools that he's bringing to the table. And again, we'll throw it back to the pandemic. There were a lot of missed opportunities last year to attend games and not to get to a chance to see quite as many quarterbacks in person, right? Not as many players in person as we used to have a chance to really see. So it'll be nice to be able to go back and see these guys in pads again in 2021, get out to more games, get out to more camps as some of the restrictions loosen. But Evers is a guy who I haven't had a chance to see throw since I watched him throw in 7-on-7 before last April. So you're talking about a huge gap, right, of time of actually evaluating one of the top guys in the state. And since that time, he went from being a guy who didn't know that he was going to be the starter on his varsity team to working hard to earn that starting job and get his name on the recruiting radar, to committing to Florida, to getting invited to the Elite 11 finals, which is the elite quarterback camp nationally. So you can see a progression there and see where I think I started him off at number 88 in the DCTF Hot 100. He's worked his way up to number 74, and now I have to look hard to see now, like, how high do we put him up after this strong performance, you know?
It's going to be a guy certainly to keep an eye on there in Nick Evers, the Florida commit. Our prospect on the rise this week. Let's go to our commit of the week. Our commit of the week, let's go to the Golden Triangle. Go to Beaumont. 2022 Beaumont United athlete Chandler Rivers has committed. He is heading to Duke. Had offers from in-state places like Houston SMU, had some other Power 5 offers like Colorado, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, etc. He is going to head to the Blue Devils. And this is a guy that is he's not saddled by the expectation that he's got to play one particular place. You can plug and play this kid, and he will make an impact.
Undoubtedly one of my favorite players in this class. This dude is really fun to watch and competitive. And that's another thing that I really like about what he brings to the table is that he wants to be successful no matter where you put him. So he plays wide receiver, he plays cornerback. I love watching him on special teams in the return game. He is electric. Really has that extra gear and can go from like 0 to 60 like the new Hummer. You know, it's like he's got 1,000 horsepower under the hood. So there's a lot to like about his game. And Duke is getting a really good one. And this, just going back to our conversation before we started rolling through the notebook, is a guy like Chandler Rivers has some really good offers, right? You see Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Tennessee on his offer list. But Duke is able to capitalize on possibly a guy here who they wouldn't probably have been able to normally get. And Duke is a great program, right? They have a solid football team, and they bring a lot to the table academically. So I'm not saying that from a standpoint that they can't recruit. I'm saying they just don't recruit in Texas as heavily as some of these other programs. So Duke is able to really come into Beaumont and steal a guy, in my opinion, who can be a big impact on their team. And not only on one side of the football, he's going to be a guy on special teams that brings it a lot too. So he'll probably make a name for himself out there.
Yes, most certainly a guy down there in Chandler Rivers in Beaumont United you should keep an eye on. We're talking This Week in Recruiting with Greg Powers of Next Level Athlete here on Texas Football Today. Get involved in the conversation at #TF Today. Let's move on now. Let's go to our Underclassman of the Week. Our Underclassman of the Week is a guy who's going to be a junior at Austin Del Valle. It is wide receiver Braylon James. He has picked up a couple of offers from some no-name programs, Ohio State and Oregon this week. He also got an offer, an invitation to play in the Under Armour All-American game. He's got 15 scholarship offers now. A guy, we've talked a lot about Del Valle, talked a lot about their receiving core.
Yep.
Maybe not as focused on Braylon James because of another guy who had been most notable there in Caleb Burton. But Braylon James is a guy you should know, because if you think that he's just the other receiver there at Del Valle, you're wrong. This kid's a star.
And Burton went down with the meniscus injury early in the year last year. I think it was in the first game, and opportunity came knocking for Braylon James, and he took advantage of it. You know, he's one of these guys who stepped up. He only had 6 games of highlights, but in those 6 games, he went for 442 yards and 7 touchdowns. So, I mean, he's making plays, right? And now he's got a friend in Caleb Burton who's committed to Ohio State. The Buckeyes come calling for him as well. It'd be interesting to see that development. But he's going to be a national name. He's already a DCTF 4-star prospect. Brings a lot to the table. He's a long and rangy receiver, but has a high level of athleticism. And on that first highlight clip that everybody watched, you can see his hands in concentration where he's able to high point the ball and make those tough plays and tough catches look kind of easy. Definitely going to lessen the blow for Del Valle losing Caleb Burton to Lake Travis, right? So, I mean, it would have been maybe the top wide receiver tandem in the state if they would have both been there. But it's nice to be able to fall back on a guy like Braylon James, who's going to be a national recruit when you lose a guy like Caleb Burton.
Yeah, most certainly. This is a guy who, probably, like I said, I don't want to say the word overshadowed, but like, remember when we say these numbers that he's doing for in just 6 games, 7 touchdowns in 6 games, he's doing it as a sophomore.
Right.
He's doing it as a sophomore, and a guy who is only going to get better. And obviously, if you're getting the attention as a wide receiver of Ohio State and Oregon, not to mention, places like Baylor, places like SMU, places like Miami, right? You're doing something right. Like,
exactly.
You are not – this is not a fluke. This is a guy that the word is out on Braylon James, and you should know about him. Let's wrap it all up with our Recruit of the Week. Our Recruit of the Week is another guy who, at this point, if you don't know his name, that's on you. It's Atascocita offensive lineman Cam Dewberry. He has narrowed down his list from a top 10 to a top 5. He is a 4-star prospect. He's the number 8 prospect in the DCTF Hot 100 at texasfootball.com/recruiting. And the top 5 are Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas, and Texas A&M. So
the math checks out there.
The math checks out. That's 5. He narrowed it down to his top 5. Let's put it this way. If that's your top 5, you can go wherever you want. Cam Dewberry going to go to one of those 5 schools.
And maybe a little bit telling her he's got one official visit scheduled. It's to Texas A&M. So I know that the Aggies have a great relationship with Humble Atascocita. Kenyon Green is there playing on that O-line. And I got to believe Cam, who was a freshman, I think, when Kenyon was a senior, has some respect for that guy.
That sounds right.
Yeah. So I think I think the math also works out there, Pickle. I think they played together on the same offensive front, and I'm sure that Green is in his ear to come join him and be an Aggie there as well. And also keep an eye on this younger prospect on the Atascocita O-line, Nate Kibble, who played alongside Dewberry last season as a freshman, and he'll be the next up-and-comer. He's one of these guys there. They just continue to crank out high-profile offensive linemen, and Kibble's next in line. But Dewberry is definitely one of the top guys in the entire country, and maybe he's leaning towards an in-state school.
Well, and let's be honest about this. Right now, I mean, for all we talk, like people say DBU, QBU, whatever. Right now, at least in the state of Texas, A&M is O-line U, and it's not. I don't think that's really
I don't think that's up for
I don't think
debate.
that's a controversial statement. Like right now, they are offensive line U, and so whenever you have a top 10 prospect in our rankings who, at the offensive line spot who says, I'm thinking about going to A&M, my mind, being a recruiting dummy, immediately goes, well, A&M's got to be the favorite there.
Right, and you can never discount the Alabamas, the Ohio States of the world. You can never say, well, they have no shot, right?
Right.
I don't think Dewberry's going to go to Ohio State, but Alabama is one of those schools, especially in the Houston area, that does great. They come and get guys they want, and they do that all over the country. But there's just something about a relationship there between Atascocita and Texas A&M that you can't discount.
Absolutely.
I got to say, too, real fast on him, I had the chance to watch him in person this past season when Atascocita played Allen, and even though the game was very one-sided and Allen kind of really took it to him, this guy was fun to watch.
Yeah.
He was so fun to watch.
He's a monster out there. He's
He
a monster.
passes the eyeball test.
Absolutely.
He definitely does. 6'4", 310. Can't teach that. He's Greg Powers of Next Level Athlete. We don't have to teach him anything.
Our mountain.
He's our mountain. Follow him on Twitter at GPowerScout. Follow Next Level Athlete on Twitter at Next Level D1. See his fine work at TexasFootball.com/recruiting.